Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I want to talk to you about how to run meetings in your company more effectively, and really how we run meetings at Self-Publishing School. So meetings are one of the things that I think we do better than a lot of other things. So we got our hiring process, which I've got a video on that, and then we've got meetings, which are I think two of the most efficient and effective things that we do, and really just dialed in processes. So that's what I want to break down in this video is, number one, the types of meetings that you should have in your company, and then number two, how you run those meetings. I'll kind of give you some examples, some structure, and some things like that. So first things first, what are the types of meetings that you should have in your company? I think that there's three that are absolutely essential, and then you can have any other meetings that you want. So number one is the daily huddle. Especially as a virtual company, this is very important for us. This is a daily meeting that's 15 minutes each day. It's a maximum of 15 minutes. Number two is what we call the weekly action call. So this is kind of your leadership team meeting. And then number three is it's important to have team meetings weekly. So maybe you have a product team, maybe you have a marketing team, a sales team, an operations team, right? Each of those teams should have their own meeting. So you got the daily huddle, what we call the weekly action call, and then we've got the team, and then we just end that with weekly action calls. So like the sales and marketing weekly action call or things like that. And actually, speaking of team meetings, one of the most effective ones that I've instituted as a CEO is the weekly finance meeting. One huge mistake that I made previously in my business was I didn't pay attention to the numbers, and it cost me a lot of money. And so I instituted that weekly finance meeting on Fridays, and we dive into the numbers. It's me and my financial controller, and that helps me make better decisions as a CEO because I'm in the weeds on those numbers. So those are the three types of meetings that we have. I like to personally batch all of our meetings on a single day. So we choose Mondays. So we'll kind of run them back to back, and those are the meetings, and we do them each week. Now, I'll just kind of quickly sidebar, this is a non-recurring meeting, but a meeting that I found is also helpful, is project-based meetings, which these are kind of ad hoc as needed. Maybe if you've got a key project happening for 90 days, you can do it once per week, but only the people that are involved in that project need to be there. But the recurring meetings, that's really what I want to break down in this video here. So number one, the daily huddle. Why is this important? This is very important because it kind of speeds up the rhythm of your business. So the daily huddle, when we first instituted this in Self-Publishing School, especially as a virtual company, I could not believe it. It was as if our company was just pulsing in a faster pace, right? We were just getting stuff done. The communication cycles sped up, and it was all in that maximum of 15 minutes that was happening daily. How does this work? Well, the meeting's broken up into three parts. So there's the what's up, or the number one priority section. Number two is the numbers, so KPIs. And number three is where are you challenged? Okay, so we'll start with any, quick, we call them what's up. So that's a, hey, heads up that this is happening, or just any announcements that need to be made for that team. And then also my number one priority for today is blank. And everyone goes through and says that. And then KPIs. So I've got another video on how to create KPIs for each individual employee. We report on those. And then lastly, where are you challenged, or where are you stuck? So you'll notice that a lot of these meetings, they really come from, there's two formats and two books that we follow very closely. Number one is Scaling Up. Number two is Traction. These are kind of my two business Bibles. And so I've kind of melded the two together. They've got different philosophies for running meetings. I've kind of melded those two together, and that's formed the structure that you're going to hear for both the daily huddle and the other meetings that we run. But one of the kind of innovations that we've made is I just found that where are you challenged works way better than where are you stuck. Because nobody ever wants to admit that they're stuck, but they will admit that they're challenged, and then you can get help on those things. Now, another very important part of the meeting process is we have what you call who, what, wins, right? So this is a list of action items that need to happen from any given meeting. So we got who's going to do what by when, right? And that is the action item. We use Asana to run all of our meetings and kind of keep a log of what's going on, but then we can have a task. We can have that task is assigned to someone, and that task has a due date, right? Now let's transition to the second type of meeting. So this is the weekly action call. So this is traditionally about 60 minutes, and it happens every single week with your leadership team. Now, one thing I'll just kind of back up and mention is every meeting we've got three roles. So number one, we've got the facilitator. Number 2, we've got the timekeeper, so the person to keep us on time. And then number 3, we've got what we call the action grabber. So this is the person who is grabbing the who, what, whens, who's taking notes, doing things like that. So every meeting has those 3 roles, including the weekly action call. And every meeting also has a KPI or a purpose. So let's say, for example, the weekly action call, the KPI is profit percentage as a company, and the purpose is to discuss things that cross-functionally kind of merge together to help the company be more profitable. And I'll give you another example for the marketing team meeting. Our KPI is cost to acquire customer and revenue. Those are the 2 KPIs. The purpose of that meeting is to talk about things that increase revenue and decrease cost to acquire customer, right? The purpose of the financial meeting is to reduce expenses and increase profitability. So we're very clear about what are the types of things that we should prioritize. And then what are the types of things that we should talk about? So in terms of the actual flow and structure of the weekly action call, here's how it goes. So we start out the first 5 minutes, which is personal and business good news. So everyone we go around the horn, and everyone shares, hey, here's one win personally, and here's one win from a business perspective. Then we dive into our one-page strategic plan, so kind of our North Star. So what are our goals, one-page strategic plan. Then we'll dive into our numbers, our KPIs. Then we'll dive into customer and employee headlines. So what are the things that are coming from our customers, things that are coming from our employees. So we're kind of just setting the stage, right? We're figuring out what's important that we talk about here. And then this leads all the way up until what we call the IDS, which stands for identify, discuss, solve. So this is a traction principle. So the purpose of this part of the meeting, and really this should be the bulk of the meeting, the majority of the meeting, so we're talking maybe 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes. We're going to identify the root issues or the biggest company issues. We're going to discuss potential solution statements to those issues, and then we're going to solve it, and always end with a solution statement. Now, we used to do something a little bit differently, which was what are the rocks? So what are the rocks that we need to discuss? But we found that when you're coming with rocks, you're coming with more things that need to get done. Whereas if you're focused on solving real issues, sure, you're going to have who, what, wins that come out of that. But those who, what, wins are going to solve the real problems in the business. Now, the last couple things as part of the weekly action call is we're going to review the who, what, wins. So we'll take 5 minutes, say, hey, what are all the action items that came out of this meeting? Who's responsible for them, and by when will they get them completed? And then also, that's kind of a backlog where we'll be able to review the ones from the week prior and say, hey, did the people who were responsible for action items from last week, have those been done? Now, the important thing about who, what, wins is that they should never be longer than a week. That's the whole point of this whole thing, is you're going to come up with action items that need to get solved and done by the next meeting. Now, if you come up with something bigger than that, that's a project. That's not a who, what, when, right? So then you need to pull that out of the meeting and create its own project for that. But oftentimes, these who, what, wins are just kind of operational things that need to get done over the next week to move the needle forward. Now, once you get that done, the very final thing, and this is how we end every single meeting, is we rate the meeting. Scale of 1 to 10. So we go around, everyone rates the meeting. As the CEO or the leader, I always go last because I don't want to kind of skew the ratings. I want to get some honest, raw feedback, and I'm always last. So I would recommend the person leading the meeting that you're always last. So you get real feedback. And the whole thing there is if it's a 7 or below, you have to say why. So if someone says, oh, that's a 7 because I think we took a little bit too long in this portion of the meeting, and we didn't come as prepared as we wanted to be, and the IDS section, we didn't really get to some good solutions, so I think it was a 7, right? That's great. Now you got feedback on how you can improve it next time. Or if you're getting 8s and 9s, then that's great too. So you know that your meetings are going really well. Now the important thing is every now and then you need to challenge your team. If you're just getting 8s and 9s, sometimes I know this is for myself, that we're just getting 8s and 9s because people don't want to have to give feedback. And they don't actually think it was an 8 or a 9 meeting. So just say, hey guys, just something to think about. I don't really know that this is an 8 or a 9 meeting. And it seems like everyone's just rating it that way. So let's be sure that we're being honest and candid in our feedback. Anyone have any feedback for how we can do better on the next meeting or something like that, right? So I'll get feedback on how we can make it better. Now that leads to the third type of meeting, which I mentioned was the weekly action call per team. So the team meetings, and those run very similarly as the weekly action call. And think about it as just kind of, that's a roll up. So all those team meetings kind of roll up into the leadership meeting. The last couple things I'll mention here are just a couple things to keep in mind, good rules of thumb. Always start on time, always end on time. Always keep the team meeting at the same time every single week. This is really, really important. Don't change it every single week. Set it and forget it. So one of the things that we found really helpful for self-publishing school is there's just very firm boundaries that the only reason to miss a meeting is if a family member died, if you died, or if you're out of work that day. Right? So that's the only reason why you would ever miss one of those meetings. So it's just non-negotiable. You plan your doctor's appointments around them. You plan everything in your life around these meetings, and you just show up for those, and cool, you got some flexibility in other parts of the day, but the daily huddle especially, and also the weekly action call, they need to start on time, they need to end on time, and you need everyone there. Because then guess what happens is you end up spending all your time kind of moving around your meetings, or, oh, let's make sure so-and-so knows XYZ, and I was expecting to be able to talk to them, but they didn't show up on this meeting, so now we got to have another meeting to talk about what we talked about in the meeting. And then there's just like death by meeting, and it's just you're going forever on all these types of meetings. So those are just a couple things that I found really helpful to make sure that those meetings are effective, that they last, and that long term they really work. So that's the last thing I'll kind of end with. And we also have this ultimate meeting guide. It's a PDF that you can download that's really kind of, we've got some checklists in there. We've got exact time stamps. So how much time do we allot for each portion of the meetings? How do we run our different meetings? I think you'll find that really helpful. So the link for that will be along with this video. You're definitely going to want to download that PDF, the ultimate guide to running meetings. I think you'll find that helpful. Also, comment below this video. Let me know what you thought of the video. I'd love to hear from you. Do you run your meetings differently? Do you have any other types of meetings that you run? What works well for you? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See ya.